So we're saying that.
Yeah. So on issue, what was the number?
215.
Yep, 215. We're talking about the event listener or a webhook for on the Ortelius side to grab webhook events that are coming from like a Kubernetes cluster watcher program or like the Argo CD GitOps operator. So those the GitOps model will publish a notification when particular things have happened in the cluster. And you can get very specific too. You can say, I want to know when a pod has been updated or, where it's a pod's been scaling. But we're interested in rollouts and deployments when those happen. Because what we'll do is we'll capture we'll know that a deployment has been completed by the GitOps operator. And then from there, once we get notified that, there's a command line program that takes the JSON string from kubectl get deployment or kubectl get rollout, and it'll parse all that and create the component versions inside of Ortelius for us. Some of the little things that we need to dive into at that level is creating that the webhook listener, where it could be either like I'm guessing they're going to be like RESTful API based ones with either a post or a GET with the payload, and from there, once we get the payload coming across, hopefully there's enough information in the payload that we'll know what's sending an event, which cluster is sending the event that we need to go in and kind of interrogate and suck in the new data into Ortelius. It's kind of like a summary of what we're talking about on that issue.
And do we have the, like when we use the kubectl get rollout, do we have the attributes that we need, or we just get as much stuff as we can?
We get as much stuff as we can, and then the CLI programs, a Python program that will pick through the JSON string to look for what it needs to find. Mainly it's looking to derive the images that have been that are running in the cluster, so the container images. So usually that's going to be like the tag, the registry name, and then the service name. Maybe I think it's the deployment name or the pod name. I can't remember off the top of my head now.
Yeah, generally people keep them the same.
Yeah, I can't remember what the pod name gets that weird generated string attached to the end of it. But either way,
it's the pod. The pod gets the prefix of like a GUID type thing, like a yeah. It's a pod. Yeah, not the deployment. Deployment will always be the same name.
Yeah, so the deployment and the rollout have the information that we need to create a component version automatically inside of Ortelius. Now, that being said, the CLI program needs to be changed to derive the digest of the image, because we store the digest as an attribute for a component in the Ortelius database. So when things are coming from the cluster side, we'll know the service name, we know the tag, we know the digest. And with that information, we can then look up in the Ortelius database to see if a CI process that we're tracking actually created that. So did we have Jenkins create a new container image for us? And if so, when we do that, we record the registry, the tag, and the digest. So because that, we can pair these two up, and we'll be able to match up what's happening on the CI side with what's running on the cluster side.
Yep. Okay. And when you refer to the CLI, is that the REST API that we're talking about that we're going to build to receive the notification? Or is the CLI something else?
The CLI is a Python program that does RESTful API calls to the Ortelius server to do things like create a component, update attributes,
Okay.
create an application version. So it's separate from the webhook microservice that we needed to create that's going to receive the notifications from the GitOps operator.
And do you have a name for that, like an alias name?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. Okay.
The one that's kind of out there is, let me put this in the chat. There is one called a Cube Watcher or Cube Watch. And Cube Watch is just a generic, basically, I think it's a Golang program.
Let me see. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Just a generic Golang program that basically watches for what's happening in the cluster. And it supports notifications to Slack, HipChat, other things like that. The one we're interested in is the webhook capabilities of that. And on the same note, Argo CD has their implementation. Flux has their own implementation. So we may need to accept notifications. That webhook service should be able to accept notifications from all the popular GitOps operators.
And you would just have a different endpoint for different
within that microservice we can do an endpoint for Flux, we could do an endpoint for CubeWatch, we could do an endpoint for Argo.
Sure.
Because once we get that JSON payload in, it's just going to be parsing it. We're going to look for the data we need out of it, and then from there we'll go on to the next step of interacting with the Ortelius CLI.
Yep. Okay, that sounds yeah. We can definitely do that for sure. Especially I can make the Golang API as well. Does that will sit inside the Kubernetes cluster? Is that where it's going to sit?
It would. So depending upon the implementation, that watcher would exist inside of the cluster, in the Ortelius cluster, as something to, as an endpoint that we can hit. Now, it gets a little tricky because you can have the SaaS version of Ortelius listening for these events. It gets notified, and then it needs to go talk to a reverse proxy that's on-prem for that company. So there's a little bit of gateway I didn't really get into in the issue about how we get the CLI triggered in the right context so it can talk back to the cluster correctly, especially when you get into the SaaS world. I kind of left that out for now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not a biggie. Yeah.
Yeah. The end result is we're going to end up running something.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just make it. Oh, obviously it will be a Docker container anyway. So yeah, that will run anywhere anyway.
Yep. Yeah. And it could be either Golang or Python is what we've been doing the endpoints with.
Yeah, I can do both, but I prefer Golang. It's funner for me to write. Does the API need authentication? Like, does it need to authenticate or it doesn't matter?
Let me think about that. I'll have to think about how we're going to, if we need to do that authentication.
I think for now we don't need to worry because we can always just put it on top. We can add it into the code, but I think we would be trying to get too tricky in taking on too much work if we. Yeah, I think let's just get something working, and then we can maybe discuss it and see how it works to start with.
Exactly. Let's start simple, and then we can build upon it on that level. So that's kind of on the the backside of the GitOps world. Now on the front side, I did put together a document, and I wasn't sure where to share it. Right now it's just in Word. It's not very long. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Share my screen. So I did put together a little bit like what we talked about last time. Ortelius as a GitOps editor, for lack of a better word. Oh, and we should come up with a name what we just talk about on the webhook side. So
yeah, because otherwise we're saying, oh, remember that Python app that does that CLI thing that makes the deployment?
Yeah, so we have to come up with some sort of name with it. I don't know if we want to call it a watcher or I don't know. Synchronize, cluster synchronization or component sync or something like that. We can call it a component sync. Let's call it that.
Yeah, component sync sounds good. It sort of stands out from watches as well, I guess.
Yeah, so it's kind of because Ortelius deals with components. It'll make it more slated towards the Ortelius terminology than Kubernetes.
Okay.
So on this, I know you're working with Sergio on starting up a white paper, and this is kind of like the use case that I came up with for the front end side and kind of how I'm envisioning it working. Basically, and we kind of went over this last time. Ortelius, through its objects, will create a hierarchy of key value pairs. And I believe the lowest level is the endpoint. But anyways, there's like a stack, and one, if you have something defined at the highest level, and then you go ahead and use that same variable, that at that level, it's going to replace the higher level. So there's this order of precedence. But basically, at the end of the day, we have these key value pairs that allow us to do some neat things through the pipeline process. Because the key value pairs can represent like an environment, you can have a different like database connection string for your QA environment versus your dev environment. And because of that, when we do a deployment, whatever your environment you're deploying to, you're going to get that part of the what I'm calling a composite list of the key value pairs. This allows us to really separate the data from the definition. So you'll never have to go and change your Helm chart, for example, from development all the way out to production. We'll just apply different values depending to which environment we're deploying to. Now on the GitOps side, it's a little bit different because instead of us like interacting with Helm and giving Helm an overrides file, we're going to be interacting with Git and somehow giving this new data into this Git repo. And that's where we need to do some research on how to do that. And I know there's like this is where we on the GitOps side, how are people managing 200 or 300 microservices across 3 to 4 environments, dev, test, QA, production, or dev, test, staging, and production. How are they managing GitOps at scale with 200 microservices, for example, and how because that's going to be at least a minimum 400 manifest files, one for the deployment and one for the service. So there's two manifest files there. If you
probably
add
even more.
Yeah, you get a config map in there, secrets, it's just going to go exponential.
Ingress, yeah. Persistent value claim, everything. Yeah, it would be quite big.
So that's kind of now there's I know people are using Helm with GitOps, and also I know there's some like Jenkins plugins. And then there's also, I believe people are starting to move towards Kustomize to manage updating data in all of these files. And also the GitOps operators themselves have some built-in templating or structure saying if you can have like a base set of definitions, and then you can add on these other files that are like overlaid on top of that one and that type of thing. So that's kind of where I'm kind of stuck at with the GitOps world, is just making sure we know what the key values are supposed to look like for a particular environment for this application. How do we get that information into the GitOps world?
Yeah. Okay.
So did you create a Google shared doc yet?
Yeah, I did. Let me get it. It's just a template that I use for a security one.
That's fine.
But that's a great problem statement, which I can add to the top. Let me just grab it from my Google
Okay.
Drive. Do you want? Are you going to put this in the?
Just put it in the. Put it. You can either throw it in the chat or put it in the notes.
My storage is full.
Oh.
I'll have to update it.
If you.
It won't let me share it if it's.
Oh.
Okay, I've got it now.
Okay, because I can make a copy and put it on my side if you want, because I got plenty of storage. I got like 500 gigabytes free.
Yeah, I need to buy some more. Okay, here's the link here.
Okay.
So really, it's just I was working on a CNCF one a while ago, and I like the sort of skeleton for it. So I've just done. I haven't put any. What you have there will be good for the executive summary and the problem analysis.
Okay.
And then maybe we just keep it in here for now, because Taras is actually going to be adding his notes as well. So maybe we'll keep it for now. Yeah. I'll speak with him maybe tonight.
All right.
Because we catch up sort of 12 hours from now. That's when our times align. So it's about 8 p.m. at night.
Okay, so I will put all of our notes in there. So that's kind of like the problem statement that the starting with, and I think that'll give us a good basis to start on. Now, I didn't the part about the notification. Kind of want to keep that separate for now. Unless I don't want to mix two different things at this point. Eventually, we'll need to pull them together, but I think right now keeping them as two separate tasks, I think will help keep people on focused on what we need to look at.
Sure. And I noticed you commented on the Azure credits.
Yep.
So that was we've received another 12 months of Azure credits. Okay, nice.
Yep. So what's going to happen on that front is on the accounts switch over on the 3rd. So one is ending, another one is starting. So okay. I have to go into the Azure portal and roll all the billing manually from one to another. It looks like I don't think that's why I have to kind of wait and see what happens. If it's going to do it automatically for me, or if I have to go into every single object and change the billing account at the resource level. So okay. Once I know, like on the 4th or 5th, I'll be able to should have that all sorted out, and then I'll be able to get you guys in there to install Argo and whatever else you want.
Yeah, we have all the scripts ready to go as well. So I actually created a test app as well that Taras is using. It's just a simple React app, and he's testing that with Flux and Flagger at the moment.
Yep.
I'll catch up with him tonight. I haven't spoken with him for 2 weeks as well, so
okay.
Yeah, keep him interested. But, yeah, it's important. I'll probably schedule every 2 weeks with him at night time as well.
Okay.
Because he's someone that we want because he's really interested and he does want to. He is quite passionate about GitOps, so it's good to see.
Yeah, and I just don't know enough about the best practices for implementation. I understand the concepts at a small level. Like if I had a startup and I had 5 microservices, I can get implement the whole GitOps thing in 15 minutes. It's not a big deal. But when you're looking at a minimum of 200 microservices for an application, and all the manifest files and all the, like you said, the volume mounts, security, all that, it just gets out of hand. I just don't just need some eyes on how best to deal with that scenario.
Yeah, we won't know until we see it, really. I can probably think of someone that I can do a test on as well for a bigger company that has quite a big repository.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And in our test cluster, we'll just need to, instead of us deploying 200 microservices, I mean, we could, but I think
doesn't make sense. I mean, if someone
realistically, I think we should start small. Yeah, maybe with in the dozen range, and see if we can get the feel for it, and then that'll help us build out the white paper, and then we can apply the white paper to the coding project and see where we get.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have the Terraform scripts to spin up the networking, the AKS, etc. Then we have all the Helm to push Argo. It pretty much does it. And then we have the test apps as well. So we're looking pretty good. Come the 3rd around then, we should be ready to press some buttons and then start seeing these problems and how to solve them.
Perfect. Because I think, which one are you going to start with? Is it going to be Argo or Flux?
Yeah. Taras is going to do Flux and Flagger, and then we will do Argo here in Australia. Yeah.
Okay.
We really like Argo. I mean, there's so many companies adopting it now as well, so it sort of makes sense for us to do that first.
Yeah.
It's a personal interest as well. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've talked to the guys that created over at Intuit, and if we need to reach out to them on how to do things, we can get a hold of them.
Yeah, nice. I noticed in the ticket just before that there was a student in there saying, "Can students work on this issue for the issue 215?"
Let me see.
It says, SB Taylor, are there any skills, tech, that students will need to know or learn for this issue? it will help students see if they're interested in picking this issue up. I think that's like a triage. Yeah.
Oh, I believe, yeah, that was probably from Nitu. Yeah.
Yeah, Nietzsche, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to, we're trying to get some students through the Google Summer of Code to help out. And this was one of those interesting issues that we're looking at as a possibility for students to work on. But what ended up happening is the CD Foundation only got 6 slots, and they all 5 of them went to Jenkins and 1 went to Spinnaker. So the other projects didn't get any coders out of that.
I'm speaking with the CNCF student groups probably in 2 weeks. I'm doing a talk for them, so maybe I can say call to action. If you do want to work on some of this stuff, let me know, and I can try and get some good talent coming through there as well.
Yeah, and what I've been doing with I have some people that you'll see some issues out there like around bubble sort and stuff like that. One of the things that I do is we come across some students and also some people that are just looking for a new profession, and I'll run into where they know some basic Python programming, but they've never really created a production application. So I walk them through building out a microservice, and we start with this bubble sort, and it's just ends up being a simple Python Flask bubble sort. And then from there, we change that up to start connecting to the database, doing queries, getting it packaged into a container image, having Helm charts, being able to deploy it. So they learn not only how to take a simple Flask program and change it into an actual microservice that's connecting to the database, but also the whole the DevOps process as part of it. So I got 2 people I'm working with on that. So if you have any students that you talk to that are at that level, or if they're more advanced on the programming side, we got plenty of that work to do too.
I almost, it's good if they're a little bit more advanced, or at least they've been programming since, for a while, and otherwise it's just more overhead for me. It's more work to.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have to know how to program, but it's I'm not going to teach somebody what an if statement is,
Yeah.
That's a little too low level or too
beginning.
No,
I would expect to see some geniuses coming out of the student groups like that. So
yeah. Because because when I've talked to our universities here in New Mexico, I get some bizarre things that they're working on and teaching. So it's, they're still stuck in some of these theoretical things that you should be working on. And it doesn't really apply to the real life, the way life is these days.
Yeah, that's a problem with the academics. A lot of the professors probably don't have that experience as well. But
So,
okay.
Well, I'll write up the notes.
Sure.
And I will take my Word doc and insert it into your the white paper piece. Let me just make sure I can edit that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll just take out the problem analysis piece.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. And then I've got a little bit, I've made somewhat of a structure, but this is just from the SIG security one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alrighty, I will get our recording posted, and it should come across on the Discord channel once it's uploaded to YouTube.
Okay, sure.
So you can then share it with the rest of your group there.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks for meeting today, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
See ya. Bye.